Welcome, Ashley. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast again. I know it's been a while.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I it's been a few years since I came on the podcast, and I'm so excited to be back and
I know.
dive into Jyotish concepts with you.
Yeah. Well, I know that today we are going to focus specifically on the D9 Navamsa chart, the very famous aspect of Vedic astrology. But I know that you chose a very special day for us to record on. And so I just wanted you to have some time to talk about that and maybe bless us with a mantra before we get going.
Yeah, absolutely. So today is Ganesh Chaturthi, which is the birthday of Lord Ganesha. And, Lord Ganesha is this god who opens doorways and he has the keys. Like his keys are represented by K2 and they open doors to other dimensions. And he's known very commonly as the remover of obstacles and blocks that are in our life, challenges. So, worship to Lord Ganesha today can help us kind of move beyond some of our limitations and open up doors for us and kind of help us with overall success and what we're trying to accomplish spiritually or with our dharma here. So we can absolutely do a little prayer for Lord Ganesha. Om Gam Ganapate Namaha. Om Gam Ganapate Namaha. Om Gam Ganapate Namaha.
Thank you. That's one of my favorite mantras of all time. I feel like it's just so grounding. It's like weighted. So thank you so much for providing us with that. And I just want to say I have so much profound respect for you and your practice. And I think that you have so much natural insight and ability and psychic awareness. We're going to talk about astrology specifically today, but I just want to give you a shout out as being a mystic, having, again, psychic awareness truly, and being an outstanding tarot reader, my personal go-to tarot reader. And again astrology. So welcome and I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I feel super honored by that. And I really appreciate you. And I'm just so glad that we have this opportunity to connect and that I've known you. It's definitely been an honor. Yeah.
Thank you.
We can just sort of lean into more of the mystical aspect of astrology also, because everybody has that within them, that ability to tap into a higher knowledge and have that intuition where you can just be a channel for the astrological knowledge too. So it's a skill that you can develop over time or with teacher, or just, on your own, just having a spiritual practice. But I think that today is a really good day to dive into that. As we're recording now, the moon is with K2 and Venus, and it's on the Lagna, it's on the ascendant. So if we're talking about Ganesha, we're looking at K2 and the energy, the vibe of the day is the moon. And even though Venus is debilitated today, in the sign of Virgo, Virgo's still about knowledge, and Venus is a teacher. She's a teacher to the um, asuras, right? So she is a guru. So we have maybe some unusual teaching, or just females that are teaching. I don't know,
Oh,
but it just seems like it just kind of naturally fell into place. I wasn't really seeing how everything kind of woven together until it was chosen. I just felt like this would be a good day to meet. So,
nice. Well, I agree.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. Thanks for choosing an auspicious time for us. And thank you for, again, coming on. And I know that we are here to talk about the D9 chart, the Navamsha, the infamous Navamsha. Everyone always asks questions about it. And hopefully today it becomes a little bit demystified. And as I was telling you, I know that so many people are going to learn today. I know I'm going to learn today. And so I'm really excited to chat. And so, with that being said, what is the Navamsha?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely get into it. The Navamsha is calculated from the Rashi chart, from the birth chart. So it's a divisional chart, Varga chart, which is the ninth harmonic. So we're looking at the ninth house and we're blowing up the ninth house. We're looking into all of the details of the ninth house in the Rashi chart. So it has all of the details of those significations of the ninth house. And the Navamsha is really, like, what it is the soul or the core of the chart, of the birth chart. It's looking at the inner nature of something. So whereas the Rashi chart or the birth chart is the surface level, it's kind of the first layer. We're looking a little bit deeper into the core of that chart. And within the inner nature of the Navamsha, we can also see the skills and abilities that someone is born with or that they naturally have. We can look at relationships. It's relationship to yourself, relationship to your soul, relationship to God, relationship to other people. And as everybody is a divine expression of the God or the Godhead, we're actually having these relationships with these little mini devas and devatas kind of walking around. So relationships are not this necessarily this uh, flat, one dimensional thing. They're very spiritual. And I think that they can be spiritual. So it's about our relationships, it's our relationship with God, it's spirituality, it's our inner nature, and kind of the essence of who we are, what our soul is, and what our abilities are.
Wow.
That's
Absolutely.
that's what it is. Um, and I just wanted to also share like why it's significant also. So it's important because when you're looking at into the Navamsha, you're looking at the essence of a thing. You're looking at the essence of the birth chart. So they're often read in parallel or in conjunction because the the birth chart, the planets that are placed in the signs and the houses and the aspects and all of that, the strengths and weaknesses in the birth chart are only as good as the strengths in the Navamsha. So the Rashi chart is kind of like a veneer, whereas the substance behind that thing is the Navamsha. So you have to look at not just the surface level quality, but also the deeper indications. And it's funny because I was kind of thinking about this talk this morning about the Navamsha, and I was washing my face and doing my skincare routine, and I'm like, ever since pandemic, like the skincare like kind of popularity like boomed, and I'm like, everyone all of
Wow.
a sudden has to have like a 50-step skincare, you know, um, kind of process in the morning and the evening. And I'm like, I don't remember it being that way before pandemic, but um the skin, like people are putting such an emphasis, I think, socially on the appearance of something.
Right.
And if you want to have good, clear skin, you just need nourishment. Your organs need to be vital. You have to have health from within in order to glow from without. And it's very much kind of a similar thing with relationships where you can have you can have a relationship that looks good on the surface, but what is the quality of that relationship? Is there depth, is there meaning, is there significance, or is it just sort of a shallow kind of thing? Or everybody has relationships for a certain thing, but we just put so much emphasis, I think, on the appearance of something, which is the Rashi. So it's important to go a step further and to look at the health of something or the
Wow.
vitality of something.
Absolutely. So much so. I mean, you know, there are two different points that I want to focus on. I mean, first of all, just what you were commenting on about relationship and how it's like relationship has the capacity to either build you up and take you on a spiritual journey and help you go deeper and self-discover and really, I mean, make your way closer towards enlightenment. Truly, relationship can absolutely be a spiritual path. But then on the same hand, a relationship can destroy you. It can take you into toxicity. It can take you into negative patterns. And I love how you drew that parallel to the Navamsha because in the D1 chart, you could have really strong planets and it could look really good. But then if you look at the D9 and there are afflictions or weaknesses, the D1 can only express so much.
Yes, absolutely. And when the thing is with the other significance with the Navamsha is basically the Rajasic interest of most people. So when people want to come to you to get a reading, they're looking at Rajasic qualities, things that bring pleasure or happiness or that feel good. And the Rajasic planets are Venus, which is about love and relationships and sexuality, and Mercury, which is about money and business. And you have to have the ability to communicate, which is Mercury, in order to have good relationships, which is Venus. So they're very much always close together, very intertwined, because you kind of need that balance of those Rajasic planets together. But usually when people are coming for a reading, they want to know these things. So it's really helpful to be able to look at a Navamsha chart and kind of interpret what you're seeing. And then compatibility, when you're looking at two charts together in relationships, the level of compatibility is going to be seen always from the Rashi chart, from the birth chart. Whether or not you like being around someone is going to be seen in the Navamsha. So you can work, you can have great compatibility with someone and be very effective at work and not like them as a person.
Mm.
That's the conflict. You can
Wow.
love a person to death, love their soul, see so much potential and all of this within them, but it's a toxic relationship and it keeps hurting you and it's not compatible for you. That's the D1.
Wow. That is so interesting. Have you seen that play out in your own
Oh,
life?
absolutely. They have to be aligned. And for someone to be in a relationship, the Navamsha's just compatibility is going to be there. You have to like the person that you're with. Unless you're in a situation where you're forced to be with them, but if it's of your own choice, and if you like the person, it's automatically going to align in the Navamsha. But I think that these are the major significations. People want to know mostly about relationships, but I do find that there is more to the Navamsha than just relationships. Again, it's your soul's who you are, like on your evolutionary journey, is gonna be seen from the Navamsha. So also like what you're good at, what your natural abilities are. People sometimes just want like a life path reading and say like, what am I good at? What are my strengths? That can absolutely be seen in the Navamsha.
Amazing. Yeah. And I love what you said too about the D9 chart having so much more significance than just being about marriage. I think that that happens with my practice a lot as well, is that people will come in and they'll be like, that says spouse. Like, what does spouse mean? And they, really want to focus on the marriage aspect of it, which, as you mentioned, I mean, the D9 is paramount in being able to clarify the compatibility with people for sure. And also, it does give insight into the overall strength of the planets over time. And like you mentioned, our kind of evolutionary path and our capacity moving forward. Um, so that's all very interesting and very helpful. But something that I really wanted to focus on too for people was how the D9 is calculated and how important the degree points of the planets are in the birth chart.
Okay, wonderful. So going back into what Navamsha means, Nava means nine, or Nav is like nine, and Amsha just means division or part. So it's nine parts, basically, is what it translates to. And basically, within this 360-degree zodiac circle, we have 12 30-degree rashis. We have 12 30-degree sun signs, and then we have within that 27 nakshatras, or 27 moon signs within those 12 sun signs. Now within those, and then also the nakshatras are about 13.2 degrees, 13.2 minutes arc of the circle. So within the nakshatra, within that 13.2 minutes, it's divided into four sections or four parts. Those are padas. And it's basically like padas are feet or legs of an animal. So they're split into four parts, and there's 108 amshas. So basically, we have 9 parts of each Rashi. If you're dividing the Rashi of 30 degrees into nine, you get, 3.2, or like three, it's three and a third, but it's 3.2 minutes, three degrees, 2 minutes of
Yeah.
of the six, uh, 60 seconds that's in a minute.
Yeah.
So we have the 3.2 degrees, which is a pada or an amsha of the Navamsha times 108, and that's a 360-degree circle. So basically, there's 12 signs by 9 divisions, and there's 108 amshas.
Wow.
So I'm not a mathematician. I was telling you before the recording, like I don't have a strong K2. So I definitely I get concepts and I really like visuals more than the numbers and number crunching. So I did create this visual of the 12 rashis, the 27 nakshatras, and then the 108 padas.
Yeah. Do you want to show it to us?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So, do we want to put it on the screen?
Yeah, let me give you permission to record. And so for those of you who are listening to the
Oh,
audio of this, you're
I
just,
have it. I have it on my phone actually.
oh yeah, show it to us.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is
Well,
the craft project that I made. I think
I
it was
mean,
during
you
the
made that by
pandemic.
hand.
I did with markers.
Incredible.
So we can put it up, as a visual on
Yeah.
the recording, but just showing like the smaller divisions and then the larger divisions.
Yeah, and it's like you had the sign in the very middle and you kind of broke it down into the divisional parts of the sign. And well, we're going to add on to that, Ashley.
Oh yeah. So one of the things, if you're looking at the order in which the Navamsha is calculated to, um, when you're looking at your chart, if there is a planet so they're all constructed basically by movable signs and trines to movable signs. So basically, if your, ascendant is at from 0 to 3.2 degrees of Aries, in the Navamsha, it's also going to be Aries, Aries Lagna in the Navamsha. So basically, if you have a planet or a Lagna in the movable signs, which is Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, in the Navamsha, and then the first degree, 3.2 degrees of that, it's going to be the same sign in the Navamsha. And if you have a planet or a Lagna within um, the Earth sign, so like Taurus, it's going to be the trine to that, but starting with the movable sign. So it'll be Capricorn as the um, sign that the planet or the Lagna is placed in. And with Gemini, it's the same theory. It's also a trine, which would be Libra, which is the movable sign. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It makes sense
Okay.
to me because
Okay.
I've looked at it. But I think that essentially what you're trying to say is that there is a rhythmic method to calculate these things. And it's the same every time for each sign type, so to speak, rather it be movable, fixed, or mutable. And, that's going to determine the ascendant or the placement of the planet, depending on if
Right.
we're looking at or the ascendant.
So, for example, if you're looking at a Rashi of 30 degrees and you divide it into 9 parts, you have 3.2 degrees of that Rashi. Like it's going to fit the first 9 signs within it. So, Aries is going to be from Aries to Sagittarius. And then once you begin the second sign of Taurus, it's going to continue that pattern starting with Capricorn, and then it'll go
Totally.
Aquarius, Pisces, and then it starts over at Aries. So it'll go Capricorn to Virgo. And then the third sign, the third Rashi, will begin with Libra through Gemini.
Amazing.
So it's basically just like 9 padas or 9 parts, 9 signs within the first sign. And then it continues all the way around the zodiac.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much for explaining that. And I think it really stresses and emphasizes the importance of a sequence in astrology. There's a sequence for everything. Everything is mathematically precise, and there's a sequence for literally everything. The dasha system, the degree points, all of it is methodical.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk to you about numerology and the importance of numerology in astrology because I know that this is something that you're extremely well versed in. Um, but I just wanted to say it was really cool when I was in my first astrology class ever. The teacher was saying that, and, I don't know if you're going to agree with this or not. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. But he was saying that if you're good enough at astrology, you don't need divisional charts because you can see the degree points and map it in your head, but it's a lot to keep track of without a
Yeah,
visual.
you have to do a lot of mental math and a lot of like, I don't know, some people have that ability. Again, something strong in their Navamsa, some people don't. So, um, but yeah, as far as like, there is a quality that each planet has that represents to the numbers 1 through 9, because there are Navagraha, there are 9 planets in Vedic astrology. And really, even when you're looking at like number sequences, like the first, I guess, one digit or single digit numbers go through 1 through 9. And when you start 10, it goes back to one again. So 9 is a complete full cycle of number sequence. And so each of the Navagraha is assigned to a number sequence or a pattern. So this, for example, 1 is very independent number. It's all about, like strength and independence, and it's represented by the sun. So 2 is about duality and having more flexibility and kind of going back and forth and relating to other people, reflecting back for you and someone else. And that's related to the moon. The moon goes through cycles and phases. And then Jupiter is about growth and expansion, because then you have the product of 1 and 2 is 3. And that's Jupiter. Jupiter is a seed that grows. So
Wow.
3 is kind of the first cycle that's been completed. And they're the 3 sattvic planets. You have the sun and the moon and Jupiter. There's the teachers of wisdom and enlightenment. And you have that 1, 2, 3 pattern. It makes a triangle, and it's self-sustainable, it's self-sufficient on its own. You have 3 sides, and it's a first stable geometrical shape.
Wow.
So 4 is Rahu,
Oh.
5 is Mercury, 6 is Venus, 7 is K2, 8 is Saturn, and 9 is Mars. So those are all of the planetary, I guess, relations to the numbers. But they all have their own meaning. So um, I think that when we're looking at, I contemplate sometimes upon numbers as well too, because like Saturn is the karaka of the eighth house and also the 12th house, and the eighth house is the house of death and rebirth, and so is that's, I mean, it basically means like death and regeneration. And 7 is related to K2. And I think maybe because it's like the Sapta Lokas or the Sapta Rishis, there's like the 7 seers or the 7 planes of existence between like heaven and hell and all in between.
Hmm.
So K2 is such a spiritual number also, and very much related to astrology with the Sapta Rishis, who were the seers who saw astrology, and also Ganesha, which also opens doors and, you know, removes that layer, that boundary of this world and the other world.
Yeah, well, that's so interesting. And some of this I've heard before. Some of it is completely new. And I'm curious for you, in your practice of astrology, how do you practically apply the symbolism of the numbers?
I mean, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. It's kind of like a extra bonus or sort of an added thing, but I don't read a chart based upon numerology. I just
Got
have
it.
sort of a general knowledge. And I think that when you're looking at someone's soul significations, I think that like the Atma Karaka is like a better representation of what someone is really like.
Right.
But I do find it entertaining and kind of interesting, because when you're reading a chart, you're looking into the essence of a thing, but you can also read people around you. You can read your environment, and sometimes I see sequences or number patterns.
Wow.
Um, And sometimes, like when someone messages me and they have like a sequence of numbers, and I'm like, wow, that person has a lot of Mercury in their number. That
Um,
like I wonder if that's going to show up when I meet them or when I do a reading for them. Or it,
yeah,
I think it's just sort of like an added bonus. I think,
totally, totally.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about the symbolism in the Bible with the number seven and that having the K2 association because seven's always been my favorite number because when I was in Christian school, like we were taught that number seven, is more of an association to God, godliness. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I love the number seven. So I've always loved the number seven. And now I'm like, oh my God, it's K2 again. It's like I have all this K2 stuff in my life, and here it is. But
Well, I mean, I love the number seven too because there's seven varas, there's 7 days of the week, there's seven colors in a rainbow, there's like, seven planets, despite Rahu and Ketu, which are shadow planets. I mean, or they're not even grahas, they're just points actually. So I love the number seven too, and I definitely um I have that similar background too of like appreciating like biblical studies. So I can definitely see how that all like everything ties in.
yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, like you said, or like we were talking about earlier with the sequences in astrology, it's just a microcosm. I mean, it's like there are these sequence and methods in life too, where it's all just kind of like a mandala, just constantly like,
Today is just a K2 kind of day. We're talking so much about math and numbers and, patterns and number like sequences and all of that. And I don't know if I like it wasn't planned. It just sort of happened that way. But when we're looking also something else that I there's so much mathematics in astrology. Astronomy has so much mathematics, and when you're looking at there's definitely patterns and sequences. But what I find really interesting too is that there are stories that support. I believe even in the Bible, when I learned this growing up, that when people would speak in tongues, they would start speaking in numbers,
oh wow, I've
like
never heard
everything was coded in numbers. I remember like a biblical reference to that, like it was very coded.
wow.
And once you get beyond words, you just get into like mathematical numbers and like geometry and sacred geometry and all of that, and it just blows the mind. But um, even with like creation and creation stories of how the you know earth was made and how the cosmos were made by the churning of the ocean in the Milky Way, there were 54 devas and 54 asuras churning the ocean. So there was an equal number of like gods and demons, and they made up the 108 divisions of the sky that are seen in the Navamsa. So there's, this kind of light and darkness that creates balance in and symmetry in creation. And, the sun rules half of the year, which is the Ayana. And that's the 54 Navamshas on the diurnal part of, or the part above the horizon. And then the Saturn rules the other half of the year, which is the other 54 Navamshas, and that's the Sama. So that's basically you have the 108 padas of these god figures and ruling half of basically the day and the night is split into 108. And we know that there are 108 mala beads on a mala. There's a signification of relationship between the distance between the earth and the moon, and the earth and the sun having 108 moons or 108 suns distance. So there's a lot with this, like 108 wasn't just like magically thrown out there. There's a numerological significance of 108 and 108 together make nine. 1 + 0 + 8 is nine, and that's the full fulfillment of creation. It's very esoteric.
It's extremely esoteric, and thank you so much. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And I really loved what you were saying about how people were speaking in tongues and talking in like numerological code. And I was just saying last night that I think that numbers and math are so amazing because it's so objective. And there really is this like transcendental, esoteric, spiritual quality to numbers, but I don't think we often think about it that way. I think when we think about numbers and mathematics, maybe that's just me. I don't know. I'm projecting this thought on everybody, but I think that usually the way that math is presented is more of like this foundational grounded thing. But then when you really start getting into the true nature of the universe and Jyotish, it's like, oh my God, like you were saying, like it's all math and it's all numbers. Um,
And everything is all about the sun, moon, and Jupiter. Everything is about the sattvic planets in creation. You know, when you're looking at um, like the left eye is I guess it's the moon, and then the right eye is the sun, and then the center third eye is Jupiter. So
mm,
the ability to see what's in front of you and the ability to see what's beyond is the difference between the Rashi chart and the Navamsa. So the Navamsa chart is really signified by Jupiter.
mm.
Jupiter in what planets, what signs does Jupiter rule?
Sagittarius and Pisces.
There you go. So what those two houses are the spiritual houses. They're the God houses,
Mm,
right? It's the difference between a mystical guru and a traditional religious guru,
right.
or any sort of teacher that's teaching you how to expand your mind and your knowledge. But when we're looking at the ninth harmonic, we're looking at the ninth house, which the Bhavakaraka, the house indicator of the ninth house, is Jupiter. And Jupiter makes graha drishti, it makes the aspects and trines. So it's looking at 159 from any of the like karma house. So like the artha houses, the kama houses, the moksha houses, the dharma. Like so, it's basically looking at trines to all of these, and then it makes the 12, which is the other kind of like going beyond the sort of basic spiritual indications is a deeper meaning and a deeper interpretation.
Mhm.
So what is the ninth house significations? I mean, this is pretty like 101, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the ninth house is about dharma and spirituality and pilgrimage, which I want to talk about your pilgrimage. It has to do with spiritual teachings. And the ninth house, of course, is also the father. Um,
Yeah,
Foreign places, foreign land, foreign travel, and also, of course, abundance, grace, riches, prosperity, fortune. Ninth house is an awesome house.
it's an awesome house. And um, absolutely all of those things, including guru, including your teacher, which we mentioned, including God, right? And tradition and respecting authority.
Mm,
Authority meanings like God's supremacy, basically, or like this ultimate authority that is kind of this intelligence of this spiritual intelligence.
mhm.
And it's also the ability to procreate. It's fertility. When
Yeah.
you think of Bhavat Bhavam, going from house to house, the ninth house is the fifth from the fifth. It's
Mhm.
the creation of the child.
Mhm.
And it's also just creation of everything in general. So do people, when we look at, a lot of times clients want to know about kids too. Will I have children or whatever?
Yeah.
And I think that you can look at the fifth house. You can look at also the ninth house. You can look at, do people even desire children? Desires is the fifth house, and it's the fifth from the fifth. Is, do they desire children? Are they able to procreate?
Yep.
Or are they just adopting? Yes, they might have a child, but it could be through adoption or in vitro or any sort of means of acquiring a child that doesn't come through them. But the ninth house is definitely fertility and pregnancy. So
Mm.
when you're thinking of, um, Navamsha is represented by Jupiter. Jupiter is the one who creates, it's the one who provides and protects. And I think that that's sort of the traditional meaning of spouse is,
Hmm.
if you're, especially if you're a woman or you're a straight female, and you're looking for a husband, someone to give you progeny, that is someone, that person will be represented by Jupiter. So they are, and when you have a trine of Jupiter to your ascendant, your life is protected. You tend to escape narrow accidents. You can, have
Wow.
this sort of sense of protection on your body. That's why
Mhm.
it's so auspicious to have Jupiter in the ninth house, first house, or fifth house in its own trines, and its own Dharma trines, and following that kind of purpose. But it's definitely gives provision. It provides not just monetary things or you know earthly things, but it also provides knowledge, and it provides skills and abilities, and the provides relationships. So
Yeah.
I want to talk more about relationships because I think that that's what a lot of people are really interested in. But however you want to
Go about
move through, yeah, how we go
that.
about that.
Well, one of the questions we had established before hopping on was what information we can ascertain.
Mm.
And when we're looking at the Navamsha, or for you in your practice, when you're looking at the Navamsha, what kind of information are you getting about a potential relationship between the D1 and the D9?
Yeah. So first of all, we have to look at what is the karaka of relationships. Relationships are what planet?
Well, I mean, Venus.
Venus,
Yeah.
basically, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's love, it's relationship, it's pleasure. So you have to look at Venus first in the Rashi chart. Where is your Venus placed? What house is it in? Is it Vakri? Is it in a Rajasic sign, a Tamasic sign, a Sattvic sign? It'll tell you what kind of partner the person has, like, or what type of relationship you will have on the surface level. So if it's in a Rajasic sign, it's going to be that person is going to want to be in a relationship for pleasure, for enjoyment, for fun, for things, for feeling good. When it's in a Tamasic sign, that relationship or that partner in their life will be more of like an object, or it will be like arm candy, or like some sort of fulfillment of, like, I don't know, sugar daddy or something like that. So
So interesting.
there's a use for them.
Wow.
There's a use for them.
Wow.
And then when Venus is in a Sattvic sign, they want a spiritual relationship. Now, this is what you know they this is what you also have to look in the Navamsha to see where that Venus is also placed. So, is it supporting that? Is it giving the support of basically what does the soul want versus what you're getting? Because what you're getting is in the Rashi chart. What the soul wants is in the Navamsha. So, for example, if you have a planet that where Venus is in Virgo, right, it's debilitated. But then in the Navamsha chart, it's in Pisces. So it's Nietzsche Banga. So Nietzsche just means it's fallen or it's weak, right? And if it's exalted in the Navamsha, that Bangha sort of cancels the debilitation, and vice versa. If a planet is exalted in the Rashi chart, they have very high ideals for a relationship, but does the soul really want a relationship? That it, if it's debilitated, maybe not. So it's Ucha Banga. And I wonder about also this. Like, do you have any perspective about like cancellation of exalted or debilitated planets? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, if
Hmm.
someone has a debilitated planet in the or a weak planet, in the Rashi, and then they have an exalted planet in the Navamsha, like, do you think that it's completely canceled, or how do you read that?
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I just want to premise this by saying that I think it's constant research for me. And it's interesting because I listen to things that I've recorded like a few years ago in comparison to how I see things now. And it's just a constant evolutionary process. So
Mm.
this is subject to change
Of
throughout the
course.
years to come. But from what, but from what I've noticed is it's not like, I mean, this is a very broad question, but to kind of boil it down to the debilitated specifically, like if there's a debilitated planet in the D1 and then it's exalted in the D9, I have not seen it to be completely debilitated, or excuse me, completely canceled. And I also think it's very, very dependent upon what houses the planet governs in the D1. So if a planet is like, let's just say it's a Yoga Karka planet, it's a planet that already has a ton of strength in the D1, and then it comes to be debilitated. Maybe it's aspected by malefic. I would say that even if it's canceled in the D9, it could give heavier, more pronounced negative results than if the planet governed negative houses. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like there's this going to be this conflict of interest too, of like what the soul wants versus what you are getting. So
Exactly.
how do you, how do you kind of remedy that, or how do you rectify that? Um, when you're looking at the Rashi and the Navamsa, we did mention like it being sort of a representation of the outer versus the inner. So the planets in the Rashi it'll show what people do with their resources and their blessings. And then the Navamsa will show whether a person has those resources in abundance. So if you have it and you don't use it well, you can see that in the Rashi. Um, so again, I kind of agree with you that there's no such thing as like cancellation, that it's much more nuanced. There's more complexities in how you interpret that. Um, Another thing is when things are in alignment, when there's not this Nichabanga, Uchabanga, is when the planets are in the same sign. There is an alignment. It's very strong indications, and this is called Virgotama. When
Okay.
a planet is in the same sign in the Rashi and the same sign in there's an alignment between what the soul wants and what you've been given and how you use it. So
Wow.
it's a very, very strong and blessed signification, especially if that planet is strong and it's doing good for you. So again, what the
Hmm.
Navamsha shows is basically the resources of the planet. Like what do you have? What is the strength and what's providing you? And then the skills that people are born with, also, especially in the Lagna of the Navamsha. So planets in the Lagna of Navamsha are going to show what you were inherently born with.
Hmm.
What are like, were you born a prodigy in certain instruments? Do you have like an incredible phenomenal singing voice? Like all of these things can be seen with the Lagna, or the first house in the Navamsha, whatever planet is there or whatever planet is ruling that. But it's extra potent when you have a planet sitting in the first house in the Navamsha. So for example, a person who has the sun may be very talented in the first house of the Navamsha, may be very talented with instruments. They have good beat, they have good rhythm, because rhythm is represented by the sun. When someone has the moon in their first house in the Navamsha, they could be a wonderful singer, have melody, and be able to listen to music and hear the tones and all of the subtleties in the sounds, and they would have that beautiful singing voice to match and harmonize. Again, that harmony is like that number two with the
Wow.
numerology, right? Um, and if somebody has, say, K2, again, we've been talking about mathematics. If someone has K2 on the ascendant, then they can be naturally good at math, right? So you don't just read. So this is a Dharma thing. It's kind of like your purpose, or kind of how your makeup, or you're woven into like what you're good at, basically, or what your strengths are as a person, why you incarnated, what you came in with, will be seen with the first house. What you have an interest in developing and can easily pick up if you try or you apply yourself are going to be planets in the fifth house.
Mhm.
So in the Navamsha, this is all just the Navamsha we're looking at, the
Wow.
skills and abilities of the Navamsha.
Got it.
So, for example, if you have Mercury in the fifth house, you may not be born an orator, but you might have the abilities to speak and learn and move your body in certain ways, dance or something like this. Any significations of Mercury you can learn and develop with some practice
Wow.
or interest, to just, oh, I want to develop that skill. Do you have the ability to develop that skill? Should you develop that hobby? Should you go after that thing? Are you good at it? Maybe you weren't born with it, maybe it just doesn't come second nature to you, but you can develop it if you have an interest in learning it or seeking out that thing. There's a desire. Again, the trines bring about what is desired.
Hmm.
So the ninth house, well, obviously the ninth house in the Navamsa is very similar to the ninth house in the Rashi chart, which it shows the guru, teaches the teacher. So you would have the ability to learn XYZ, whatever planet is there, those significations based upon the support or the guidance of a teacher or a guru. You can learn it. You have the ability.
Hmm.
Planets that are in the 6, 8, and 12 in the Navamsa probably not have the ability to learn those skills very easily. There's going to be constant problems, challenges, things unexpected that sort of pull you away from that thing. It's not necessarily the smoothest, easiest path. Maybe someone wants to become a singer, but if they have the moon in the 6, 8, and 12 or in the Navamsa, they're going to have a horrible singing voice. That's the
Hmm.
difference between the Rashi and the Navamsa.
That is so amazing. That is so interesting. So, just to make sure that I have it clear, you were saying that planets in the first house of the D9 chart show natural gifts that someone can have, and it comes very naturally. And then in the fifth and ninth, it's more about skills that can be developed through
Yeah,
practice.
through yourself or through other people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so that's really interesting though, because you were saying that the sun can represent like rhythm and the moon can represent singing, K2 can represent math. Like, could you give like one word to describe the planets for people?
Sure.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, any instruments or something to do with rhythm is the sun because the sun has a rhythmic kind of comes up at the
Yeah.
same time. It's very constant.
Wow.
It's very constantly shining, right? So it has a sort of beat of like it's repetition. Moon is melody. Mercury again is moving your body.
Hmm.
And so like art performance arts could be that. Venus is also art, any sort of artistic abilities. Jupiter would be teaching. Mars is like anything that has to do with martial ability, like fighting ability to do martial arts or anything that, develops that kind of refinement of skill. K2 is math. So you have these kind of significations that are related to the karaka of that planet.
Of course. And so I'm really interested in talking about, and we do, are you still good on time?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm still good on time too. Um, I was interested in talking about the Atma Karka between the D1, the D9, and maybe the
Okay.
Dara Karka, but I also wanted to talk about, if we have time, the seventh house of the D9, because that's the house of relationships, which I know is.
I think that that's a great thing to talk about. So the Atma Karaka in the Navamsa chart is called the Karakamsha. So that's what it is. So if you're looking at the Rashi chart and it's the planet with the highest degree, that's going to show your Atma Karaka. It's the soul indicator. It's like the planet that represents your soul. Wherever that planet goes in your Navamsa chart, whatever house and whatever sign it is, that's going to be your Karakamsha. And it creates like kind of its own special lagna in a way. So it's going to that sign with the planets is the Karakamsha, has its own special name. And from there, we see what the soul really wants, what the soul really wants to express versus the Rashi chart, which is what life is giving you. So you may really, really want to be a painter, but you're stuck in, you know, a desk job, for example.
Mm.
Just, that sort of thing. So the it shows like what your soul really wants. And then again, the liberation of the soul is going to be the 12th from the Karakamsha. So basically, we're looking
Wow.
at what alleviates or purifies your destiny. And
Can I just say something really quick?
yeah,
So what you're saying is finding the Atmakarka in the D9, that's the planet holding the highest degrees, the 12th house from that planet. So if you count from that planet,
well,
of course, the 12th house from it, that's going to give insight into how one may liberate themselves.
exactly. And also what your birth circumstances may be in the next life also.
Oh,
If you have K2 there, you're working towards liberation. You're
wow.
working towards moksha. If you have a malefic there, you're going to come back into more of a denser vibration. Or you may be born on Earth or another loka or another plane or another dimension or another planet. I don't know, another galaxy. Who knows? I mean, astrology just sort of blows my mind. Sometimes they don't have all the answers on where we reincarnate. But since we're on Earth, and this is what we know of this experience, I would imagine that a malefic, 12th from the Karakamsha would show, more difficult or more karmic significations that you have to work out. Benefics are going to make things more easy. And also the Ishta Devata is the planet that rules or is in the 12th from the Karakamsha. So this is the deity that's helping you kind of fulfill your soul's desires and your soul's significations. So the Ishta Devata is what leads you to God, basically. What are the circumstances that lead you to God? So, for example, if you have Rahu, 12th from the Karakamsha, this is going to be sin that leads you to God.
Wow.
And that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. I'm interested in that. I'm interested in the dark side of Jupiter. I have so many questions for
Oh
you.
my goodness. Yeah, we have to do that for sure.
Okay, so
So, yeah.
go ahead, please, please.
Oh, yeah. Part two, you were asking about, the seventh house in
Yeah,
the
or the
Navamsha.
Darakarka.
Yeah, I mean, the Darakarka is signified of the partner, basically, like whatever, um, you know, like what type or what kind of character they are. But the whole Navamsha is bigger than these small things of the
Exactly.
Karakamsha and the Darakarka, because it does show like the whole nature of a person. So when you're looking at the first house is you always in any Varga chart, and it's you in relation to what that chart represents, you in relationship to your spirituality, you in your relationship to God, you in your relationship to your partnership. That's going to be the first house. The seventh house is always the other, so it shows like that your partner, it shows like who they are, and these are the kama houses, the houses of desire, 3, 7, and 9. So 3, 7, and 11. So if we're looking at the most significant, obviously, is going to be the seventh. What is your partner like? It's your partner's nature, it's their inner nature. And also kama's desired sexuality. The third house is Mithuna, it's copulation, it's coming together, male and female. It's the natural third house of Gemini, which is the couple, right? Um, I One of the things with
Interesting.
the third house is going to show what makes a person what turns a person on, what's the arousal. If you have Jupiter there, spiritual concepts and topics may turn a person on. They may be attracted to teachers or gurus. If a person has, you know, Mercury there, they're going to be attracted to lighthearted nature, jokes, kind of things that are kind of easy, kind of going nature within the other person. So they're going to be people are attracted to different things. And you can see that from the third house. When you're really looking at how much intimacy a person wants and a person engages in the sex itself is going to be seen from the seventh house in the Navamsha. So it's the fifth from the third. It's the desire or the arousal of the arousal. It's just the act itself. It's acting. It's a creating that
Well, it
thing.
makes sense. Totally makes
Yeah,
sense. It's like there's the state of arousal, but there's what gets you to the arousal.
exactly. It's the
Makes sense.
behavior,
Yeah.
and also the seventh house is the 1-7 axis. It's you and then the other person. So it's that connection between you and relationship, you and other. So if you have, for example, what are some of the things I was thinking of? Moon. Um, if you have Moon in the seventh house in the Navamsha, your partner is going to want to have frequent sex with lots of partners because Moon connects
That's interesting.
people. Moon is has 27 wives. Moon is Krishna.
Haribol.
Loves that,
Totally. The
engaging.
gopis and flirtation and yeah, variance.
Yes.
Well, and
Wants
the
to,
moon
yes.
itself is a different shape every day, right? The
The
moon is
moon makes its
constantly
rounds
very
very
fickle.
quickly.
Very, very
It's the
fickle.
fastest moving orbiting body other than
Right.
the Lagna.
Right.
So
Fascinating.
yeah.
Huh.
So if you have Saturn, for example, or K2, these are actually, malefics are actually better for, you know, people who, I wouldn't say it's better, but they're more limited partners. It may even take them a while to want to warm up to the idea of having sex. Also, it takes them a long time to get them into bed, you know.
Interesting.
So they'll be more probably chaste. And I think that Jupiter also in these trines will show someone who is more ethical, or wants to wait until marriage, or
Oh,
someone who wants to honor their spouse. So they're going to have more of a belief system around, that act. And what also, every house in the Navamsha has a signification. We talked about 1, 5, and 9 being your skills and abilities, the 6, 8, and 12 being things that are difficult to learn. But the second house in the Navamsha shows your fidelity. Are you a loyal person? Are you cheat, or will you cheat? So when you're looking at someone's chart, since like this is the probably the biggest jewel of the day, if someone's into doing their partner's charts or scanning people for dates, like, should I date this person? I don't know.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Look at their second house in the Navamsha. If there's a sambandha between, or a relationship between Mars and Venus, they're going to cheat.
Wow.
I think Parashara was saying that someone with Venus and Mars in the second house is going to be sleeping with others' wives for their whole life long. So they're just a chronic cheater. It's even worse if you have Rahu there, because then it just makes it very scandalous, brings the scandal element of Rahu.
Well, my
When you
interest is
have
peaked.
Saturn there, K2 there, it will give someone restraint from, not cheating. Now, again, the stronger the yoga will be, the more extreme the case. So, for example, if you have a conjunction, that's strong indication that that person is unfaithful. If you have Parivartana yoga is actually the strongest indication. So if you have, one planet in another planet sign and vice versa, they're in each other's signs, that is absolutely hands down unequivocally someone who is not faithful to just one person. They might, and there, if there's Jupiter connected, they might have a belief system of non-monogamy or like polyamory, for example.
Mm.
So they're different. It's not all the same thing, same circumstances. And if, for example, if you have like Taurus or Libra and you have Mars there can be dasha periods or time periods that cheating is more likely within that person's chart. They're not a cheater per se, but there may be certain circumstances that, life brings about this lesson or makes them, seek out other people while they're in a relationship or a marriage.
Are you
So
saying Mars and Taurus in the second house specifically?
yeah, if there's
Okay.
a weaker relationship between Venus and Mars, it could even be Venus and Scorpio or Aries.
Oh,
So if you have Venus and Mars's signs or Mars and Venus's signs in the second house, there can be temporal periods or dasha periods where that person is likely to cheat, but they're not necessarily a cheater.
got it,
It's
got it,
not in their
got it.
makeup.
It's like
There's
it's
just
a weaker
circumstances.
connection.
It's
Yeah,
a circumstance. It's a
got
time.
it.
It's a time period of where that would possibly happen, but it's
Well,
not in their core nature.
and that's really helpful too. And I'm curious to ask you about this. I mean, I think that having an understanding of our birth chart is helpful because it helps us not to fall folly to various tendencies that we have. You know, for example, I had a reading when I was 19 years old. I was told a few things about how I'd operate in a relationship. And because I knew I was prone to those tendencies, I actively worked against those tendencies. Do you see what I'm saying? And so, do you think that if people have that in their birth chart and they're gaining awareness, or in their D9, and they're gaining awareness of these planetary periods where they may be more likely to cheat, that they could actively make the decision to not, or they could maybe engage with it in a different way? Or do you think it's just like, fatalistic?
That's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. It's fate and free will, because that makes me think of two things. First thing is what you resist persists. So if you're railing against something, pushing it down, you either suppress it or repress it versus healing it and developing stronger, more elevated aspects of that nature of the planet that's causing you quote unquote problems, right? It makes me secondarily, it makes me think of going back to what are your skills and abilities? Can you learn communication in relationships? Look at the trines.
Wow. Amazing, Ashley.
Do you
Awesome.
have the ability?
Yep.
If you
Yep.
don't, can you learn? If
Well,
you
right.
don't, can a therapist or a counselor help you?
Totally.
So it's all there in the chart. It's set there, but do you have those resources? That's what the whole point of looking at the Navamsha is saying, do I have those inner resources to overcome this problem?
Wow.
It's all there. It's already written. It is fatalistic in that sense, but it's also a free will if you can sort of choose to develop those planets that will give you the option to work on those things. Someone can have the Someone could be born into a family of therapists. You can see that in the Navamsha. They have therapists all around them. Their mother, their father, their cousins. They're all marital and family therapists. You have major major issues in your relationship. In the Navamsha, you can't access that. You have a debilitated Jupiter, for example, or it's heavily cursed. It's not just debilitated; it's like in the eighth house with a bunch of malefics. I don't know, but you may not do anything with that. You have the resources there, but what are you using it? What are you using the resource? Are you using the resources or not? Basically, that
Yeah.
is going to be seen in the Rashi. You
Mm,
can have all of the wealth available to you. Are you applying it? You have to go back and forth between the Navamsha and the Rashi.
got it. Got it. And it's interesting because hearing you say that, I mean, I can think of various clients I've worked with, rather it be in um, social work or in astrology, where it's like someone could have an issue. There are so many different circumstances. Someone could have an issue and not want to work on it. They don't care. Like if they're cheating, they don't care. It doesn't matter. There is no issue. You know what I mean in
Yeah.
their mental state. But then, using this example, this is a hypothetical situation. Second, maybe people really want to do therapy and they want to do better, but for whatever reason, they can't access it. Every single therapist they get is bad. They don't resonate. It can't work. But then you have the situation where it's like someone wants to do better. They find the great therapist. They're doing the work. Things are changing and turning around. It's like we see that in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of draw that example out to show people how that might look in the real world.
Yeah, and again, if we're going back to the example of like a weaker connection in there, for example, if there's a planet that rules that house of skills and abilities, I think we're going with Jupiter, so let's just use Jupiter as an example. Um, there may be a time period where they're able to access it or not. It will be during the dasha of that planet and depending on the strength of that planet.
Mm,
So they may have bad luck, bad luck, bad luck finding a therapist, but someone comes along and helps them change, healthcare providers, and all of a sudden they get a good therapist until
wow.
that, you know, healthcare program is expired. And then they're back to not having a good therapist. So it also depends on like the planet that rules the house will be looking at the dashas. It brings up that signification
Incredible.
during that time period. It's not a constant. It's not like they have constant access
Of
to
course.
that thing.
Well, and life is constantly fluctuating, and it's like sometimes we're in a good relationship, and then that relationship ends, and then we have, it's like we have a job that we like for whatever reason it ends. It's like life is a constant up and down, and I think that this just helps illuminate how that works astrologically and how to start tracking it astrologically. And I think that this also gives a lot of insight into timings of things. We get a lot of questions about like when is this going to happen or when is that going to happen. I think that this is helpful in bringing light to those types of questions.
Yeah, and I think that, there's always this question too. Like I remember when we met, the first time we met at the conference, and I was asking the host of that conference, When does the Navamsa mature? I was told 40. Now listen, if you're looking at, there's going to be different circumstances that make the Navamsa mature faster. If you're an enlightened soul and you're coming in here and, to this, Maya and this like birth, having already developed a lot of these advanced concepts, your Navamsa may mature earlier in life. The standard kind of ruler for everyone, which not everybody fits that standard, is 40. I was told 40.
Interesting.
Now, if you look back at the mathematics of things, 360 degrees divided by 9, Navamsa is 40.
Wow. Have you seen that to work though? Like when you're doing readings for clients over the age of 40, have you seen that?
I think that there's a certain maturity and responsibility that people take. That has to do with Saturn. Saturn's matures at age what,
36.
36.
Yeah.
So 36 to 40, I would say, if there's slow maturation. Some people never grow up. Some people never. I think it also, you have to kind of look at Saturn for that. Um, so yeah, Saturn return is going to give you a certain new phase opening up to your life, or you have certain circumstances that you have different kind of set of responsibilities. But I think the maturity really sets in, and you've experienced what life has to offer at the maturation of Saturn.
Got it.
So I would say yes, between 36 and 40
Okay.
would be the Navamsha, but there's also going to be special circumstances where people don't actualize, or they don't reach their, soul potential, or, they're
Interesting.
not, yeah, they're not interested in developing that in this life. They have different itinerary. Um, but yeah, especially for, you know, um, relationships, like who wants to hear like that their partner is gonna, like, or gonna come through at 40, or you're gonna be ready for a partnership at 40. I don't think it means that. I just think it means that you've experienced what life has to offer and you've
Totally agree.
grown.
Yeah, well, and I think of too, I mean, I have friends who dated and had relationships and maybe by the time they reach 40 or 50, they don't even want to be in a relationship. They're like, I've tried it, been there, done that. I don't even like it. I'm better off single. I don't want to do it. I have friends literally like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on the chart as
That's another
when.
thing that I could talk about. I don't know if I wanted to talk about that, but I just thought about it. So when you're looking at marriages, people ask too, like if they've gotten married and then divorced, will they get married again? And you can also see that in the Navamsha and what that spouse would be like. So, for example, you know that the spouse now is the seventh house in the Navamsha chart. The eighth from the seventh is the death of that relationship, and it's death and regeneration. It's kind of the new relationship. So that would be the second house. So the second house, the planets are in the second house. The planets that rule the second house are going to show the second spouse.
Right.
And then eighth from there would be the ninth, right? So we're looking at the third wife or the third marriage, right? And for all of your LGBTQ plus listeners out there, when we're looking at, sexuality and relationships, and we've been talking a lot about like Venus and Jupiter in this sort of traditional hetero kind of relating. But there are planets and significations that show someone being homosexual as well.
Yep.
And those planets are the neuter planets, which are Saturn and Mercury. They're, I could say that they could be asexual or homosexual planets. And again, the stronger the sambandha, stronger the connection between Mercury and Saturn is going to make varying degrees of someone being gay. So, for example, if you have a parivartana of Saturn signs with a parivartana of Mercury signs, that person is absolutely 100% born that way, and there always will be gay. And the connection or the conjunction between those two planets will also make somebody homosexual. Um, and you can see that in the Rashi chart.
Cool.
So
Amazing. So interesting. So cool.
mhm.
Thank you so much for that.
I
I
just
mean,
had
it's
to
just,
throw that in there. So,
no, of course, of course.
inclusivity, I suppose.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Although I think that, when we're looking at astrology, it's very ancient, like kind of there's like medieval kind of, it's not like modern in the way of thinking about inclusivity, actually. A lot of the stuff that I've learned has been pretty sexist, and it's traditionally that way. Like a woman has her duties and her skills, and a man has his duties and his skills, and it's pretty narrow focused.
Yeah.
But I think that a chart is much more nuanced, and that's the old philosophy, that's the old belief. Which there's still some great core values, but there's also some new um, ways to interpret a chart that can also be used.
Totally. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. And I do want to be respectful of time. I meant to talk
Yeah.
about this at the beginning. I want to hear about your India pilgrimage that you went on and what exciting opportunity you have coming up in the works.
Yeah.
So
So,
unique.
yes, I had the most phenomenal trip to India. I did a nakshatra temples tour in mostly South India and Tamil Nadu. And I visited all of the temples that relate to every nakshatra. And it was such a spiritual and transformational experience. I just felt like it really shook loose a lot of like karma, and it kind of came back to myself. It was sort of a reintegration of like my higher self or my soul, and it was very much an activation of my Navamsa chart. When you go to temples and go to pilgrimages to holy places, that is the ninth house, which is what we've been talking about all day today, which is the Navamsha. It's all about spirituality and your relationship with God and your soul's evolution. So I just thought that that was such a wonderful opportunity for me, and it was my first trip to India, and it won't be the last.
Yeah.
Uh, because I'm going to be going back to India in early 2026 and going to the Navagraha temples and doing a pilgrimage there. So I'll be taking a group of people, whoever wants to come with me, as soon as I um, solidify the dates and kind of promote that or post that. There's going to be a certain amount of people that can join, and we'll all go together and
Wow.
experience this healing.
Amazing. And I mean, with you and your astrological insight, I know that you're just going to have so much to share and give people insight to. And I'm sure, I don't know what you're, I don't know if you're going to be practicing while you're there, like giving readings or anything, but it will be an opportunity to get close to you and the knowledge that you possess. And you have a YouTube channel. What is your YouTube channel name exactly? Is it
It's Sun Goddess Astrology.
okay? It's Sun Goddess Astrology, and you did a tour of the temples.
Yeah, so I vlogged my trip basically
Amazing.
to the temples, and I spent close to like 2 to 3 months in India, and I went other places besides the spiritual temples, but I did make a playlist of all of the nakshatra temples that I visited. I put the names of the places there, so people are interested in going there themselves and don't want to, wait to go on a tour or with some group. They can go on their own. They can find them, and there's like video footage of the outside, not necessarily the inside, but yeah, and just sort of talking about my experiences and how it felt, and it was fun to make like little vlogs of that. So there's a playlist on my YouTube channel, Sun Goddess Astrology.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is different to go in person. It's so different to go to India in person and to, I mean, it feels visceral with spirituality and reverence and tradition. And it's like you'll just be walking through the street and suddenly bells will start ringing and people will mob towards a temple, or there's like incense constantly burning. I mean, it's just like this inherently spiritual, sacred place. And then getting to bask in the ambiance of one of these temples. I mean, I can't imagine how transformative it is to physically go.
I mean, it's embedded in the society everywhere you go. I think just being there in the vicinity does kind of awaken something within you. But when you go directly to God or these portals that are within these temples, they're ancient. They've been like doing these pujas and prayers to God for so long. There's a very strong connection to that deity there. It has to affect your energy fields. It
Yeah,
has to.
totally.
And it is so, so powerful. So powerful. So, yeah, it's a really beautiful experience for those who have gone. I know that they know what we're talking about, and people who haven't, there's definitely an opportunity to join, me on a trip in 2026 too. So
Ashley, congratulations. Just so cool that you're making it accessible for people because, going to India alone is not easy. Going with someone who knows where they are and how to navigate, I mean, it just makes it so much more doable, in my opinion. I would way prefer to go with a guide, especially to a bunch of different temples, than by myself, for sure.
I would not advise going to India on your own.
Yeah.
I would not advise that to anybody.
No.
Having an invitation, having a set itinerary, being in safe places. Not every place is unsafe in India, but it's just like the world. It's a representation of the world. Like if you just use common sense, there are certain places that you don't go at night, and it's any country in the world.
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah,
Exactly. I'm in
it's
Las Vegas right
it's
now. I wouldn't recommend going 4 blocks over at night. Like, even
yeah.
this isn't India specifically, it's everywhere, like you were
Yes.
saying.
Yeah. But
But
I definitely feel like it's easier going with a group or having some sort of set plan or itinerary. Absolutely.
yeah, and this is
Yeah.
the birthplace of Jyotish and Ayurveda and
Yeah.
yoga and all of the amazing Vedic technologies that are just so profoundly helpful and that we have the blessing of knowing in this lifetime. So thank you so much for coming. Hopefully, I get to have you on in the future to talk about the dark side of Jupiter and maybe spirituality through Rajas and some of these interesting things you mentioned. And again, just thank
That'll be the next podcast for sure. That'll
totally.
be an interesting one. Yeah. Can't wait.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Christine.
Jill.